Hey CTK Youth, Matt here. It's day one of the U version Bible app devotional entitled Fearless. I'm going to read from Genesis 3 and then from 2 Corinthians 12. The serpent was the shrewdest of the wild animals the Lord God had made. One day he asked the woman, "Did God really say you must not eat the fruit from any of the trees in the garden?" "Of course we may eat fruit from the trees in the garden," the woman replied. "It's only the fruit from the tree in the middle of the garden that we are not allowed to eat. God said, 'You must not eat it or even touch it. If you do, you will die.'" "You won't die," the serpent replied to the woman. "God knows that your eyes will be opened as soon as you eat it, and you will be like God, knowing both good and evil." The woman was convinced. She saw that the tree was beautiful and its fruit looked delicious, and she wanted the wisdom it would give her. So she took some of the fruit and ate it. Then she gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it too. At that moment, their eyes were opened, and they suddenly felt shame at their nakedness. So they sewed fig leaves together to cover themselves. When the cool evening breezes were blowing, the man and his wife heard the Lord God walking about in the garden, so they hid from the Lord God among the trees. Then the Lord God called to the man, "Where are you?" He replied, "I heard you walking in the garden, so I hid. I was afraid because I was naked." "Who told you that you were naked?" the Lord God asked. "Have you eaten from the tree whose fruit I commanded you not to eat?" And from 2 Corinthians 12, verse 9, each time he said, "My grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness." So now I am glad to boast about my weaknesses so that the power of Christ can work through me. That's why I take pleasure in my weaknesses and in the insults, hardships, persecutions, and troubles that I suffer for Christ. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Here's two scriptures about failure. The first story is about Adam and Eve's failure, and the result was, in their failure, they ran and hid. They were ashamed. They felt naked. They were aware that they were naked before God, and they didn't want to be near him. And yet, in the second letter in the Corinthians, Paul is acknowledging that his weakness, his failures, all the difficulties that he's had, and how those didn't cause him to hide or go away from God. Those actually caused him to move towards God. And they were actually reminders in his life how much he needed God. So what's the difference? Failures or sin that drive us away to hide, or failures, weaknesses, or struggles that cause us to depend on God? Well, the difference is the gospel. The gospel is that we are accepted and approved by God, not based on our performance. We don't depend on our performance to be acceptable, so we can be assured, and we can, at those times of failures, actually go to God and own those failures and those hardships, and we can bring them to him, and that can actually be something that draws us to him rather than makes us hide. So that's a good project for all of us, to depend on God when we're feeling weak, when we're failing, and when we're feeling out of control. So